What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we are doing Crane from Proving Grounds Practice. This is a part of TJ-Nulls OSCP Prep, so that's why we're doing it today. This is a pretty cool box because we get to play around a little bit with PHP deserialization vulnerability and object injection from that, and also we're able to just learn a little bit about gadget chains and magic methods, and how all that PHP serialization and deserialization vulnerabilities work. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first thing we're going to start off with is going to be an nmap scan. So we're going to do sudo nmap tac-sc for default scripts, tac-sv to enumerate the versions, tac-v to get ports as they come through, and tac-on to output in a normal nmap format. And then we can put it in a folder called enum and call it initial with this IP address. So we can go ahead and put in the password. And we see that we have a couple of ports coming through right here. We have 22, which is SSH. We have 80, which is HTTP. And we have MySQL on 3306. So we can take a look at this. Let's do less enum initial. And we can see that we have OpenSSH 7.9 Debian. So this is the Debian instance. We also have HTTP and Apache. So PHP most likely is going to be running on the back end. And the HTTP title is going to be Suite CRM. And it looks like it's requesting a login page. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I mean, there is also MySQL, but it is unauthorized, so that doesn't really help that much. So let's start off with this web server. So we can come over here to Firefox and put in the IP address and turn off burp. We could take a look at what we got here. So it looks like we have a login page. So this is Suite CRM. So the first thing I'm thinking about, right, is I want to know what this actually is. So I'm going to go over here to Google and I'm going to do Suite, or let's do what is Suite CRM. And it's going to tell us it's an open source customer relationship management application for servers written in PHP. So we know a little bit of information here on what it is developed with. So we have PHP, and now another thing that we can look at is for default credentials. So we could do Suite CRM default credentials. See if we come back with anything. So we have a couple of things here. Okay, so it looks like there is no default login for Suite CRM. We have a default name of admin. Okay, so we can try a couple things with that. Default to admin. All right, so it looks like the username might be admin, and we can try password. Okay, that didn't work. We can try admin. And we get in. So it was admin, fairly simple, fairly easy. And now we can get into this web application. We can actually see and check out the functionality of what we can do in this web application. So let's see. We can go ahead and enumerate emails. Maybe we can get a couple users or not. We can see if there's any reports. Maybe we want to check the contacts. All right, so all these are at example. So it doesn't look like there is really anything. It looks just like a static installation of Suite CRM. So what I want to do now is I want to check out the version to see if I can find the version, and then we can go ahead and sort of look up on Google and see if maybe there is an exploit or a vulnerability in this version of Suite CRM. So if we come over here to the top right and where it says admin, we can go down and it says about. So we can click on that. And right up here, it has version 7.12.3. So what we can do is we can copy this and do Suite CRM version this exploit. And we can see here that there is a POC for the version of Suite CRM that we have. So let's go ahead and actually, I believe it's this one. Yeah, so we do have an authenticated remote code execution through the scheduled reports module in Suite CRM less than this version. So that's pretty cool. Now this is a PHP deserialization vulnerability. And what we're going to do is we're going to exploit it with this POC, and then we're going to go back and create our own serialized payload and exploit it manually, just so we can sort of see the differences and actually understand what's going on in the backend, right? So before we actually just go ahead and run this, what I want to explain is a little bit about how this actually works. So what happens is, for example, this right here. We're doing a post request, or it's grabbing user input into the email recipient's, how do you say it? Like input box, right? I can't think of the word right now, but into the user input field. And so it's taking that and it's also putting it as an array. So we're grabbing that as well. We're setting a variable this to email recipients, and then we're base64 encoding it and serializing the user input that we give it to, or that we give to the server when we're creating a scheduled report. So it saves it, and also when it comes right here, to get this function, all it does is it unserializes it, it base64 encodes it, and then it just puts the actual payload of whatever we put inside it directly to this variable. So that's pretty cool. Now we can see what or how this works. So we can go ahead and grab this code right here, come back here. We could do cd loot, and we can do git clone on this. And we have that as well. And so basically the vulnerable parameter here is going to be the email recipients parameter. I don't know why it keeps going up to the top like that, but anyways, the payload. All right, so right here it says it all. The payload can be stored in the database using the legacy save call of the AOR scheduled reports module, and the server incorrectly assumes that the email recipients parameter is always an array. However, if a malicious client just passes the email recipients a string, which is what we're going to do with our payload, the data will be stored in the database just as is. So then once it's deserialized, the gadgets are executed on the server and we obtain remote code execution. So what gadgets are basically just snippets of little code that allows for arbitrary code to be, how do you say it, executed on the backend server. So it uses these things called magic methods, and these magic methods are basically just special methods within PHP that override PHP's default actions when certain calls are performed on a certain object within the code. And so those gadgets can be chained in order to achieve object injection, remote code execution, or obtain any sort of end goal for an attacker, right? So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go over here. Let's go into CVE, see what we got here. All right, so we do have a requirements.txt, so we can do pip3 install tech-r requirements. We can install the requirements. All right, that's done. Now we can do /exploit.py. Or actually, we should take a look at it before we do that. Let's go up here to the top. All right, so we're just importing a couple modules up here, or a couple libraries that we're going to be using. Now here are some payload templates, and this is serialized PHP payloads. So basically, there is a couple ways on how to describe this, right? The A would be an array, I would be an integer, O would be an object, and then these would be the character lengths, and then these would be the values of these objects, or of these certain values of data. And this would be a string, the S would be a string. And what serialization is at its core is basically just a way to sort of create a a storable representation of a value. It just is a lot easier to store a serialized sort of container or a serialized payload just like this in a database than it is to have a whole entire file with a bunch of different, how do you say, calls and actions, while still keeping everything sort of true to what it was meant to be doing, right? So these are just payload templates. We can come down here and we can see in the def main, so we're defining a function. We are adding all these parameters. This is a host name. This is going to be the host, the username, the password, and the payload. They're all strings. We can see here that we're creating a session with the request library, and it's creating a session in order to authenticate and grab a cookie. And then we were going to pass it the username and password, of course, and then we're going to pass it the payload, and it's just going to sort of add this template and put our payload within it. So it's going to be a string right here, and it's going to grab the length of our payload, put it right here, and then it's going to grab our actual payload and throw it like a string payload and put it right in between these quotes. And then it's just going to encode it. So right here, it adds all the payload templates in combination with our payload. And I'm not sure why he does this in the POC. I'm not personally sure why he does this, although there might be a reason. When I did this manually, when I exploited this manually, and you'll see when we do it, I just used the command payload serialized PHP, and it works perfectly fine. So then once he does this, it goes to this, and it base64 encodes the payload, and then it does a post request to the AOR scheduled reports to create a new scheduled report with the email recipients right here. We're passing it a string instead of an array, and it works out for us because we, after that, obtain remote code execution off of it. And this is just grabbing the record ID after it's created, and I'll show you guys that later. And then it's just opening it up and requesting it so that we can actually get the callback from the server. So let's get into it, and let's just, hello? Okay. There you go, that works. And let's run it. So let's do exploit help. So we can see that we need to pass it a host, a username, a password, and a payload. So let's do /exploit tech http. Actually, we can just grab it from here. This portion, copy and paste. And then we could do tag u for admin, and tag p admin, and tag capital P for the payload. And the payload that I'm going to be using is going to be this payload right here, the one that he provides, and it's just a PHP reverse shell. You can grab it off of rev shells and go from there. So here we can paste this in, remove those extra lines. We can change this right here, change the port. We can change the attacker host, and we can go ahead and set up a listener. So let's do ncat tech nblp 9999, and we can run this. You can see right down here, we get a callback. We get a reverse shell on the box. So that's pretty cool. Now let's keep it going. And well, you know what? Let's actually, before we continue with this, let's go ahead and exploit this manually first, and then we'll continue with the box. So first thing you want to do when you go to exploit this manually is you want to be able to create a gadget chain, right? Or a serialized payload. So right here, he has the tool that he utilized to create the payload, and it's going to be phpGGC. So we can go ahead and come over here. And if you see right here, all the gadget chains or all the gadgets that are available with phpGGC are right here. And so what these use, all these are for different frameworks, right? You see Laravel, you see you see cake PHP, and so each one, depending on what you're using, depending on what type of payload that you want to create, or what type of serialized payload that you want to create, it has one for you, right? And so right here, each one of these uses a different magic method, which is right here in the vector. And if we do PHP deserialization, and we go to payload all the things, we can come down here to finding and using gadgets, and you can see a list of magic methods. So I do recommend coming to this, website or coming to GitHub and payload all the things. And then you can read this section right here, and this gives you so much information that's like invaluable realistically. And so all these are magic methods that can be utilized to get object injection or to get remote code execution, depending on what your final goal is, right? And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to grab this, grab that, come back here, go back, and then we'll do git clone on this. We'll go into it, and then we'll do like that. Okay, so what we can do is we can do this and then tac L to list everything. And the gadget chain that we're going to be using is going to be monologue RC1. So it's going to be this one, RCE1, sorry. And monologue is just a logging library for PHP. So it's sort of like, I want to say it's sort of a carrier or like a container to hold our malicious payload in that gets executed when it gets deserialized. And so what we're going to do, we're going to grab this, right? We're going to come back here, and we can do attack I and put this in here, and we can see a little bit more information. We see that the vector or the magic method that we're using is destruct, and then we can add a couple, it tells us that we need the function and we need the parameter. So the function is going to be system because we want a system call, and then the parameter is going to be a reverse shell. And so what we're going to do here is, actually before we do this, I want to show you what we're going to be using. So we can do this, and we're going to encode it. We're going to use tac U for URL encoding. We're going to use tac B for base64 encoding, and then we're going to use this F fast destruct, which is basically just makes your payload a little bit more reliable. Like, that it's going to execute, right? So yeah, let's run it. We're going to do this. We're going to do tac U for URL encoding. We're going to do tac B and then tac F, and then we can put in the monologue and system. And then we can grab the same payload from this POC script right here. You can go ahead and copy that here. Change the port and change the host like that. And you can see that it gets printed out. So it gives us the payload, basically. It gives us a payload in base64, and it gives us the payload also URL encoded. So if we do not use the URL encoding or the base64, we can see what it actually looks like. And this is it right here. This is what our serialized payload actually looks like. So we have an array, right? We have an integer, we have an object, and then it has the monologue handler. And then here we have the system call, and we have our actual payload right here, sort of in the middle. And it goes just like that. So then what we can do is, all we need to do is come back here, or we just do this actually. Let me see something. I'm wondering. Yeah, there you go. It's more like it. So we'll grab this. This was weird because I'm not used to seeing it like this, or at least this long. And I'm guessing it's because of the order of the encryption or the encoding that I used, which is weird. But this is what I'm used to seeing. It's the base 64, and then it gets encoded in URL because 3D and 3D are, or I mean percent, yeah, percent 3D, percent 3D. I think it's how is it? Equal sign. So what we can do, grab this, right? We'll copy it. And then we want to open up Burp, come up here to all. We can go down to reports. We're going to create a new report, create report, and we can name it whatever, test, or let's say rev. Let's do rev. And then we can do add this whatever, save it, right? And then we can come over here back to the scheduled reports. We can create a new scheduled report, name it whatever. We can name it reverse, like that. And we're going to grab the report that we just made. We're going to put whatever you want here. Doesn't matter. And right here in the email recipients portion, you can just put anything. Doesn't matter. We're going to change it. And the description, you can leave it blank. And we just want to make sure that Burp is ready to intercept. Drop those packets. And then we can intercept this. Let's go ahead and make sure that Burp is on here. And we can do save. And here we get the response, or the request. So we can send it to repeater. Come over here. And we can delete a couple of these things. We don't want description. We don't want this whole portion right here. We only want email recipients. We can delete this whole portion right here, all the way up until, let's see, up until right here, which is the schedule type equals monthly. Can take that off. We can take off all of this, the report ID, the AOR report name, the status. You want to keep the status to active, and the name to reverse. We can take out the rest of this stuff up until right here, okay, until the action for save. We can take out this portion all the way up until right here. So all we really need for this, right, is the module, which is AOR scheduled reports. We need the action, which is save. We need the name, which is reverse, the status, which is active, and the schedule type, which is monthly. And this email recipients portion is going to be where we're going to inject our payload, right? So we're going to backspace that, and we can come over here to the PHP GGC, and we can do /PHP GGC, and then the, what was it, monologue RCE1, I believe. Right here, monologue RCE1. We could do the tag B, or tag F for fast destruct, tag B for base 64 encoding, and tag U for URL encoding with this. And then we could do system call, and we can go ahead and grab this reverse shell right here, paste that in there, delete these two things, and we can change this up to make it our port and our IP, like this. Here we have the base 64. Copy this. We can do ncat nvlp 9999. Come back here to Burp and paste it in here. And all we're going to do is click send and follow redirection. And here we have a shell. Now, to finish this box off, we're going to do let's see if we have Python on here, which Python. And then we do. We have Python 3, tag C, import pty, pty.spawn, and then bin bash like that. And then we can go Control Z, and we can do stty raw minus echo fg, and then we can do export term equals xterm, and now we can clear the screen. And so what we can do from here, right, is we can do a First, we can cat out etc password to see if there's any other users on the box. So we could do cat/etc passwd and then grep for anything that ends with sh. Oh, might need a pipe there instead of that. So it doesn't look like we have anybody else except for root. We can check if we have any other groups that we're a part of, and we don't. We can see if we have any permissions, sudo tac l. And it does look like we have some. We can run user sbin service with no password as root. So this is pretty simple. This sort of misconfiguration of this binary, because what we can do is we can literally just do sudo and then grab this right here like this, and we can do .. and then bin bash, and we are root on the box. So we can just go cd/root, and then we can grab the proof.txt. And if you're wondering where the local.txt is at, you can grab that from the var www directory. So var www, and you can see that it's right here. That's the local.txt. And so what I want to do real quick is show the vulnerable, like the vulnerable method or function in the PHP code, right? So let's do cd html aor underscore schedule. Oh no, modules. Sorry, modules aor schedule reports, and then we can actually less this aor. There you go. So we can come down here, and right around this section right here, you can see the vulnerable function right here. So we have this get email recipients. It unserializes it, base64 decodes it, and then it just puts the variable directly to whatever the user inputted into the email recipients portion. And you can see this is exactly like the proof of concept sort of explanation that he put in his GitHub repository. So that was that. And that is the box, basically. That's everything that I want to show you guys. So if you guys enjoyed, if you guys learned something, go ahead and leave a like, comment something, comment whatever you want, or another box that you want to do. This is in preparation for the OSCP, and this was on TJ-Nulls list. So that's why we did it today. And I will see you guys in the next one.